Thank you for checking out Real Talk Personal Finance. Shit's about to get real. Cash Flow King with you today, and today we're doing our second round or second episode of Financial Bloopers, and it's a fucking miracle because I have with me a first-time, very special guest, friend of mine who's going to join us for Financial Bloopers. He's also a financial advisor. Please welcome to the show for the first and hopefully not the last time, Retirement Hitman.
What's up, Cash Flow? This is not a miracle. This is the Retirement Hitman. I'd like to first say thanks for having me on, been patient with me. We'll try to get back on here in the future. I want to say hello to my fans in London, Canada. Hello, Detroit, Rock City, Cleveland, Rock On. I am the excellence of execution, the sniper of bad financial advisors and advice. And most people would say I'm the best there was, the best there is, and quite honestly, the best there ever will be.
Wow, those are big shoes to fill. All right.
That's my promo. That's my wrestling promo. That's it.
Nice. All right, so tell us a little bit more about you, who you are, what you do, credentials, licenses, whatever you want.
Cool. Let's see. Started about 15 years ago in the financial services industry after 2008-9, so pretty awesome time to get started. I started off at a very large blue bank, and from there went to more of the educational side. I have different series licenses, 6, 63, 65. So I can't offer advice. I don't do individual stock trades, so I don't have the 7, anything like that. Several years ago, I don't know, maybe like 5, 6, I have a Chartered Financial Consultant designation. I've got the Chartered Life Underwriter designation. Let's see, what else? Some other silly ones like Certified Retirement Counselor, Associate Life Health and Claims. Currently working on Fellow of Secure Retirement Institute. I think they're sunsetting it, but I'm going to see if I can work that one out really quick. And then maybe a few more in the future. I like your, have you talked about your designations before?
I have, yeah, and actually, I don't know. Well, I have. Spoiler alert for the listeners, we may publish this. I don't even know if I told you this, by the way. I was, not too long ago, probably a couple months ago, a guest on another podcast, and I am waiting for that episode to release, and I may play it on this podcast. But they did ask me a few questions about that, and I did go into it. But just while we're here and people are listening and might be wondering, as far as I go, yeah, I do have a Series 7 license, a Series 66 license, certified financial planner, chartered life underwriter, just like you, retirement income certified professional, RICP, and then I have an MBA.
That's the one I want next.
Which is useless. The RICP is, for anybody listening that might work in the financial services space, by far, in my opinion, I learned the most from and is probably going to be the most useful is the RICP designation. A lot of people look at the CFP as kind of the gold standard. I have mixed opinions of that. I would say that your chartered financial consultant, your CHFC, is pretty much the same thing. I think there might be a difference of maybe one course or something like that. So
yeah,
basically the Retirement Hitman knows his shit is kind of where we're going with this, and he's been around the block a time or two. So anyway, I didn't mean to.
Yeah, the RICP would be next on my my hit list. I worked it in there with the Hitman thing.
There you go.
Nice. That one, yeah, definitely looking for that. But I'm big into employee benefits, complete financial planning, the big picture. I don't really get into the weeds on a lot of stuff. I can, but for most people, it's not needed. So that's kind of my background. I really, really like helping people save and plan for their future and doing it in an honest, ethical manner. That's really my motto.
And I would say, I don't know if you know this or I've ever told you this, but I do have a short list of people, and there's at least 3 in the financial services space, or probably only 3. And just kudos to Retirement Hitman, because he is one of 3 people, if I get hit by the proverbial bus, that I've told my wife she needs to contact.
Oh,
so
don't put that on me, man.
Yeah,
Come on.
That's on you. So anyway, so pretty good segue, I guess, into the financial bloopers segment that we're going to talk about today, because you do see a lot of different things, and I'll kind of turn it back over to you, and we'll have a little banter back and forth and kind of take it where you want to take it. But Yeah. So what do you want to talk about today for financial bloopers?
So cash flow, I wanted to go back. I was trying to make this list last night in my head, like what I think is most important, and it was kind of going through chronologically in my head. So the first one that popped up was one of the first people I had interactions with consistently with my most current position. I've been there about a little over 10 years now, and it was a client we had, and he was retired. He had worked years in I wouldn't say, I don't know if it was manual labor or something like that, but an honest, hardworking guy, saved up for years, and he would look at his account daily, at least weekly, we know, because every Friday we would receive a call from him, and everybody in the office knows him. If we bring this story up, everybody knows exactly who I'm talking about. But it wasn't just him. A lot of people do this, and it's hopping in and out of the market completely or just trying to time the market. His situation hits on a lot of bloopers, but that's kind of the main focus I wanted to look at, where what he was doing, he would first watch the news. That's a whole blooper episode in itself. I canceled my cable and satellite subscription probably 6 or 7 years ago. But at the end of the week on a Friday, if the news was good, the market was up, he would buy all in, 100% of his portfolio. And I think he had around, like, at the time, 80,000. But you got to think, this guy, it doesn't seem like a lot for somebody who's retired, but he had a pension, he had Social Security, and it covered most of his pre-retirement living expenses with that. He was not a high income earner, but he'd done a great job saving up and letting the market do its thing in his portfolio. And he would look at his $80,000 portfolio every Friday. If the market was up, he would put it all into the Fidelity Contra Fund. So, you got to think, over the past 10 to 15 years, I call them the Contra Fund millionaires. That growth S&P 500 sector has just murdered compared to everything else. You couldn't have picked a better fund to be invested in. And he would move in and out basically depending on what the news was that Friday. And we'd try to tell him every week, like, look, you're really not doing yourself any favors. And I finally got, like maybe numbers will get through to him, because he would go in and out of cash. I did the calculations, and I'm thinking it was maybe like July, somewhere between like July and September. And I wanted to see, okay, if he had just let it sit still, because he wasn't taking any distributions from this money. He had a nice little nest egg and for his needs. And I wanted to see how much he would have if he did nothing. So pretty easy calculation. I looked January 1st, what's his balance? Punched it into the portfolio visualizer, and he would have had about 12,000 in the positive year to date. He was already down 10,000 year to date by doing nothing but moving in and out of the market. Of course, he was doing the complete opposite. He wasn't, buying on the dips. He was buying when the market was up. But it just goes to show you can't really depend on the news to make your financial investment portfolio decisions, to try to time the market, all these things. He was fearful. You couldn't tell him anything otherwise. And it got so bad that Fidelity actually put a stop on his trades. He had eventually to manually request a trade on his account, because these mutual funds can't handle large swings in and out daily of their account. So they do put a cap on how many times you can do it in a certain amount of period. And he exceeded that. So eventually he kind of, got locked down and couldn't move anymore. But have you seen something that extreme? That was probably the most extreme example. And it was one of the first examples I can remember running across, where he was just moving completely in and out of the market, trying to time it. He was, so many bloopers we could talk about, being over concentrated, looking at just the S&P 500. So many different things we could kind of go off on tangents on future episodes. But have you ever had a client do that, where they just move completely in and out?
They try to, and there's people that try to do that all the time. So first of all, for the listeners here, as you all know, and I sound like a broken record, but I have to say it, because there's some people out there that are immediately going to look up Fidelity Contra Fund. And they're going to put some money in it.
Well, I can tell you,
not a recommendation.
We dropped it, if that tells you anything.
Yeah. So the show's for education and entertainment only. We don't give any advice in the show. This is not a solicitation by any means, and not a recommendation to do or not do anything, including trading in securities. With that said, yes, I've seen people do all kinds of crazy things. And, there's some companies out there, a lot of companies out there, whether it's the funds themselves where they'll put some kind of short-term trading restrictions on there, or for those people that want to be really extreme where they're going in and out, and let's say they're moving to cash or some type of fixed account or fixed interest product or something like that, there's restrictions on moving money in and out of that for precisely the reasons that you mentioned. So there are people that try to do it, but not a lot of people are able to continuously do that successfully. And just to paint the picture for the listeners, what Retirement Hitman just described is the opposite of, I guess you can call it kind of the joke or the tagline that everybody says usually, which is buy low and sell high. And what this guy's doing or has done in the past seems to be the opposite, right? If the markets are up and the news says this, that, or the other thing, and things are doing well on a Friday after they've risen, presumably all week, well, now things are more expensive and we're not buying on sale, we're buying high, right? And then if the next week, let's say, or 2 weeks or whatever goes by and the markets are down and the news is pretty bearish and the guy sells out and moves to cash, what you're basically describing is that he's actually selling low. So he's doing the opposite of the tagline or textbook phrase or whatever you want to call it out there of buy low, sell high. And so, I think there's, and this isn't a shot at this person. I don't actually know who this person is, and I don't need to. But
No.
the level, there's a correlation generally between the level of education that somebody has regarding financial literacy and the things that they actually do. Now, with that said, I can tell you there's a lot of people that are very highly educated that also do some dumb shit. So, I don't know how much I personally believe that, but it's been said out there before that people that understand markets and investing more than those that don't have a tendency to be more aggressive than those that aren't. But to answer your question, yes, I've seen people try to do it. I think I don't have a specific example for today's show. I think yours is a good one. And so essentially on an $80,000 portfolio, I think you said that one of the snapshots was over the course of 7 months or so? He had essentially
it was like 6 to 9 months.
6 to 9 months. He had a negative overall $22,000 swing, right? He could have been up $12,000 in that account. Instead, he was down $10,000. So because he's listening to the news and moving in and out and trading in and out, it's a $22,000 swing, which again, on a huge portfolio, doesn't matter. On an $80,000 portfolio, that's significant, right? Mm-hmm. So, yeah, just lesson to the listeners there. I mean, the last thing you want to do, we always joke in the industry, the people that have the best returns are dead people. And the reason for that is they don't fucking, it's true, they don't do anything, right? The account, they're beneficiaries while they're getting stuff straightened out and figuring out how's the money getting parsed and who's taking a distribution and who's doing an inherited account and all that kind of shit. The money just sits and hopefully grows, and, there's not a lot of activity that's going on at that point. And those people typically have better returns than those that are doing what this guy was doing. So, yeah, I think that's a great example of market timing and the fact that most people, unless you're a professional trader, and even still, you probably shouldn't do it.
Cash flow, you just referenced a study I was about to mention related to this. So we're talking about the Fidelity Contra Fund he's moving in and out of. That's not an endorsement. That's just the facts. That's what he was buying. But Fidelity, I believe it was between the years 2003 and 2013, wanted to see what type of investor performed the best, right? And that's what you just mentioned. The number one type of investor with the best returns on average was dead folks. Yep. They were fucking dead. The number two were people who forgot they had an account. So that alone tells you something. They weren't messing with their portfolios. And I can see that just, anecdotally. You could pull up somebody's account, and how many times have you pulled up somebody's portfolio and say, oh, I haven't touched this for 20, 30 years, and it may be very well time to do so because they're a year away from retirement. Yep. But you look at their return, and they have like a 12+% rate of return for just basically setting it in a crock pot and forgetting about it. So I thought that study was really cool, and it's ironic that you mentioned it right before I did.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't. That was not planned or scripted. I thought it was Fidelity that did the study, but I couldn't remember. But yeah, it's this ongoing thing in the industry where it's true. It's not just us saying that for the sake of saying that. Listeners can probably go ahead and Google and find the study. But yeah, all right, cool.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty neat. All right, so the second thing, and it's kind of in relation to this guy too, was he did not have a financial plan. He did not have a retirement plan, so to speak, on what he was going to do in retirement, what kind of job or hobby he was going to do post, major career move into retirement. You can't just bank on going to McDonald's or Hardee's and loitering with your old buddies and say that's going to be, your retirement. He got bored. He was looking at his account every day, every week. And I see a lot of people not have purpose going into retirement. And not only is it mentally fatiguing, it's unfulfilling. It hurts your portfolio. I mean, there's so many psychological effects. There was this one great financial advisor in Canada that I follow on Twitter, and I may butcher the story, but essentially he wrote a very sad story about his dad, that his dad was the local tire salesman. That was his whole identity for 30, 40 years. Went to retire, and he was financially able to do so. Had saved up a great bucket of money to go retire and basically do whatever he want. But his whole identity and his whole life was tied up in being the tire salesman. So when he got to retirement, he fell into a really big depression. And they can't say for sure, but they do believe he probably killed himself because he had no purpose. And, that's not a financial blooper, so to speak, but, having a purpose can not only help your bank account or your retirement account, but just your life in general. So, I see guys when I go through to get my Diet Coke in the morning at McDonald's, or I drive by Hardee's, and you see all the Silverados backed up into their spot like it's a morning car meet. And, maybe that's how they start their day, but they better have an idea afterwards what they're going to do, and it shouldn't be looking at your account. I'm pretty boring. You probably know this. I'm practically an index investor. I have
same.
I don't think I have any individual stocks currently. I used to. Learned my lesson the hard way on that.
Yep, me too.
I'm almost 100% index ETF, and people ask me daily. I mean, I don't know about you. Like, what's the market doing? And my answer, 99.99% of the time, I have no clue. But I'll look it up for you. And I think, I'll probably need to word it a little better, because they look at me like I'm a shithead. Like, well, what are you doing being a financial advisor and you don't know what the market's doing? I'm like, I don't care. It doesn't change anything. The news, the market does not dictate what my portfolio is going to do. I've already came up with that game plan. It's in motion. I can handle the swings, ups and downs. I'm thinking 10, 20 years from now. I'm not worried about the day to day. You can, but I don't think you will succeed. I mean,
I think you're
you
right.
Can look at
like I just look at myself sort of as a financial strategist, right? And it's all about strategic thinking. And most people don't. Most people want to know, like you said, what's the market doing and where should I put my money? And the answer, unfortunately, for some people, and this isn't to make fun of people, but there's people out there that really don't have a lot of resources. And the answer is, it doesn't fucking matter. Put some damn money away, And I would rather spend time looking at, for example, timelining out, okay, here's where I am in my life right now. Financially, age-wise, family-wise, the whole 9 yards. What does the trajectory look like? And you can't predict it with a crystal ball, but what am I looking at over the next 10, 20 plus years? What does that look like? Am I going to plan to take any time off for an extended period? Am I going to have fluctuations in income? And you might be sitting there scratching your head, the audience, thinking, who the fuck cares, Cash Flow King? And the reason I'm bringing this up is you get into things like tax planning and partial Roth conversions and conversion ladders. And are there years where you don't have a lot of income? And maybe when you did, you put some money in pre-tax, but now you want to strategically start to convert that to Roth and get it in the tax-free zone. When's the best time to do that? Those are decisions that, in my opinion, are way more material and impactful than, well, should I put an extra 1% in this fund versus that fund? I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but for the vast majority of people, it doesn't matter. And so I would agree with you as far as that goes. Even now, with that said, there's some people, I'm kind of going off on a tangent here, I guess. So let me stop before I do that. I agree with you on the indexing thing. And I used to, and I've said this on the show before, I used to pick individual stocks. Cube Crusher is great at it. He has that as part of his portfolio, I believe, still, although he does do some indexing as well. I am horrible. I'm probably the world's worst stock picker, and I've proven that time and again to myself.
Same.
And I've just decided to no longer play that game because it's focusing on the wrong thing. There's a saying out there about people climbing. I was actually reading an article, I want to say it was either yesterday or the day before, about people, and it was talking about corporate America and climbing up the ladder, climbing up the corporate ladder, only to get to the top and realize it was leaning against the wrong building the entire time. And people focusing on the wrong things, And I think that's a big part of it. It's building good habits and good systems. It's not necessarily being the best stock picker in the world. And therefore, to your point earlier, we don't necessarily need to know the nitty-gritty of every little thing. Now, I know it's important, and Cube Crusher does a great job for our premium, shameless plug, premium subscribers on the newsletter and state of events and, the economy and what's going on and what's the Fed doing. And those things are important. I'm not saying that they're not. But it shouldn't force us to all think that we need to become day traders in our own account, because for the most part, we don't.
Hell no.
So
no, I mean, How many people do you think you talk to that think the financial advisor's only job is to pick stocks or investment management? I mean, it blows my mind how many people think that's 99% of what we do, and it's probably closer to maybe 10%. It's for most people, it's set it and forget it. A target date fund would work for a lot of people.
Yeah, no, and where I was going to go on the tangent side is that there's different ways to manage money, and indexing is one of them. Some people like to do it themselves. Some people will use, like you just mentioned, a target date fund. And there's other people, whether it's right or wrong, good or bad, that want to feel like they are somehow more involved, or their account is doing what it's supposed to be doing, and they almost like to see certain types of activities. This isn't right for everybody, but there are a lot of managed accounts out there, or advisory services type of accounts out there, where somebody is paying a fee where their portfolio is managed for them, and generally that's going to be in accordance with a lot of things, age, income, desired retirement age, maybe a risk tolerance questionnaire and how they feel subjectively about risk and things like that. But they can at least see that there's things happening in their portfolio. It's not every day, but it could be quarterly, it could be annually. In some cases, it's a little bit too frequent in my opinion, but there's some programs out there that will run it monthly. And my point in saying all this is, for people that are otherwise going to do what the other guy you described, one of your old clients was doing there, moving in and out every Friday, for people that are otherwise going to do that, a managed account could be a great option for them, because it almost saves them from themselves and blowing up their own portfolio, which goes back to what you were saying about, retirement. And the phrase that comes to mind there for me is that people need to think about retiring to something, whether that's hobbies or whatever they want to do with their time, family, charitable endeavors, whatever the case might be, as opposed to just retiring from something. And I think we all will, think about, I got to get out of this job. I got to get out of this career. I don't want to do this anymore. Okay, great.
Exactly.
But what do you want to do? If you could wave a magic wand and have $1 gazillion and never have to worry about money again, what does your day look like? And I think that's a really powerful exercise. I was at a goal setting retreat one time, and they literally had us write out, like, what is your ideal day? What is your ideal week? What does that look like? And it was kind of empowering in a way to kind of sit down and write about that. This was years ago, but it was a pretty cool exercise, I thought.
Yeah, and everybody's retirement isn't fucking sailboats and vineyards. It's whatever you want it to be. You could sit at home and play video games, and if that brings you joy, do it. But just have a plan around it. Don't let it just kind of creep up on you and put you in a massive depression. But you mentioned earlier too, the more you think sometimes your decisions are based on your own hubris. But the Dunning-Kruger effect, I'm sure you're probably familiar with that. You find a subject that you think you know more about, but you actually know less about it than others, and you perpetuate this view that, oh yeah, I can beat the market. In this instance, where you were talking about trying to beat the market or manage or move your portfolio in a way that you think is more efficient. But sometimes you get to the point where you realize, okay, I do realize what I don't know, and there's things I will never be able to know. And that's kind of the enlightened period I've probably had in the last few years. When I first started, I was trying to do the whole individual stock traders, and I'm probably just as bad, or if not worse than you, at picking individual stocks. I just don't do it anymore. I've made a few good, lucky decisions. And if you got enough, maybe if it scratches an itch, if you got a little FOMO, you've got enough to throw under the lawnmower, as my mom would say. Yeah, you could maybe put a couple % of your portfolio just to kind of scratch that itch and get it out of your system. But by and large, that is not how most people make wealth, because you can look at the SPIVA study for active managed mutual funds, and they say, I think it's 95% of most mutual funds on average. It does vary by asset class, and there's some argument that in international asset classes or other categories, they may be able to perform better. But over longer periods of time, even the best CFAs, the best economists, the best money managers don't beat their index that they're tracking and trying to beat. Now, you could probably pull up an active managed fund, and there's some recency bias in that, with the S&P 500 in the last 10 to 15 years, but also survivorship bias. Most of those funds don't last that long, and they get deleted. So I am not a big active managed fund. Some of them, and they can serve a purpose, but by and large, I'm all index. I don't think about it hardly at all. I keep it simple, and while I'm working, I have hobbies and stuff that I can focus on. I don't need to be looking at my portfolio. As long as I came up with a decent strategy around my retirement and I'm meeting those retirement goals, I can go do whatever I want. I don't have to, live on ramen noodles and turkey sandwiches and, penny pinch. I could, as long as I'm meeting my future retirement goals, I can spend my money now and a little bit later too. But I think that's a whole other
buy the
podcast.
fucking latte, right? Isn't that the expression? Buy the fucking coffee or whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah, you could forego those $5, $10 coffees or whatever you got, but you're going to be miserable. Like, I made my coffee this morning, but doesn't mean I'm going to not stop by 7 Brew and get a nice chai latte later. So absolutely buy it.
Yeah, and I'm a big believer in that, and I think I've mentioned this on this show and the other podcast I alluded to at the beginning of this show, where you have to, in my opinion. So all right, there's different phases to this. Tell me what you think about this. There's different phases to this, and I would say that for somebody, there's a saying out there: don't compare your beginning to somebody else's middle or end. I don't know where that comes from, but I've heard that a time or two before, and there's a lot of people that maybe they haven't had their shit together financially, and they're trying to get it started. For them, the answer might be cutting back on expenses to an extent, but you still have to live, right? Everybody talks about the big 3: food, housing, transportation. If you can control those big 3 costs, then generally speaking, you're probably going to be on the right track. And the $5, $10, whatever the fuck, Starbucks, latte, this, that, or the other, doesn't matter. Now, for most people, as they get further along, maybe where we are now in our lives and careers and whatnot, it doesn't matter. But there might have been a time in life where saving $20 was a big deal, or, this, that, or the other thing. So there's a time, and I guess in a season in life for everything, but I think the overwhelming opinion, at least mine is that you don't want to wait and work and deprive yourself all the way up until retirement and then think you're going to enjoy it, because you might not be able to. And I might have told this story before. I think you know this, but I bought last summer a fucking Sea-Doo. And I've been toying with the idea, no pun intended, of buying a boat, and I just could not justify it, I didn't actually want to go and buy a boat, right? Don't have a ton of space, but wanted something. Ended up buying a Sea-Doo, and it was so far the best purchase I think I've ever made. It's also in no way, shape, or form an investment. It is an absolute money pit. But I love it, and I enjoy it, and it brings me joy, and I can't wait to take it out on the waters this season. And it's, you got to find things that you like, and don't be afraid to spend some money when you have it. Now, 10 years ago, would I be able to do that? Probably not. So you can't listen to this and be like, oh, well, Cashflow King bought a Sea-Doo, fuck it, I'm going to go out and buy a Harley, or I'm going to go out and buy this or that. Maybe you should, I don't know, but I think it's going to be a little bit different for everybody. Am I making any sense?
Absolutely. I think it's safe to say you are probably on track to meet all your retirement goals, and you could spend whatever fuck around money you have left over on anything you want. I've bought 2 boats before, and you know the old saying that the best 2 days of a boat owner's life is the day they buy it and the day they sell it. I don't regret it. We did our own little cost benefit analysis and looked at the payment on it. It's amortized over a 15-year payment, so it's very affordable. Obviously, it's a depreciating asset, but the amount of times we got to use it each year. After our second child was born, we have 3 girls now, but I calculated, look, we could rent a boat or a pontoon with more people for double the amount of times we use that boat this year. Looking at the insurance, cost of upkeep, the slip rental, we used a dry dock, but all of it was way cheaper just to rent. And I didn't have to tow it. I didn't have to back it down the ramp, which I'm sure you've had that lovely experience backing your Sea-Doo down the ramp. It's really fun.
It is. It's actually not bad. So the way I do it is I pop the trunk, okay? So that we have a little SUV, and I just look straight back. People are like, oh, cut the wheel and it goes in the opposite direction and turn it this way, turn it that way, use your mirrors. Fuck that. in my opinion, you just pop the trunk, look straight back, and go. But yeah, I mean, it's not exactly the most fun thing in the world, but I'm starting to get used to it.
Yeah, it's definitely an art form and best practiced in an empty parking lot like Walmart or something like that. But I mean, that's kind of maybe a whole other issue where people don't live comfortably while they're working and saving for retirement, and get to retirement and just don't know how to spend the money. I had, if it's okay to get into it, just I mean, it's a quick one. My first job at that big major blue bank, we had a customer come in all the time, and she drove like I'm not making fun of anybody's car, but it was an older '80s station wagon Crown Vic. I'd never seen a Crown Vic station wagon. I've seen the police car Crown Vics, but this one was a Crown Victoria Ford station wagon, and it was the square body style. So she'd had it for a while. She had duct tape holding her belt together, and I didn't judge, but I looked up her account. She had millions of dollars. And, if she wants to wear the duct tape belt, cool. But I had a feeling, and it turned out to be true, she was sacrificing her whole life to save up all this money. And she never spent anything on herself or anything, period. And in retirement, it was the same thing. She can't take it with her. You're not going to fucking die and take this wherever you think you may go. But she had millions and was wearing a duct tape belt and drove in a car that barely made it there and back. And she could have bought everybody's car in the parking lot. It was crazy. So that's her thing. That's her choice. But we do see a lot of people not find that balance. And, back in the old day, that was probably really the only way we could do it. Now we've got computer software and simulations, and we can run Monte Carlos and see all this shit on how your future is going to play out. And I call it the old school Dave Ramsey way, where can I plug Dave Ramsey? Because I'm not plugging Dave Ramsey at all.
You can, but I'm going to turn around and take a big fat shit on him. But go ahead, yeah.
Yes, yeah, like he's done some good, but overall, yeah, don't listen to him when it comes to the investment part of it. Yeah, Dave Ramsey, the old school way was live on as little as possible, save as much as possible, whether it's 15%. I think he speaks in generalities as far as, 15% for everybody is not the correct answer. But, 15% for my 17-year-old versus 15% for a person in their 50s just getting started, it's not going to cut it, But the old school way was live on as little as possible, save as much as possible. When you got to retirement, you still live on as little as possible. You spend as little as possible and hope you don't die and run out of money. And you don't have an invest. There's a whole laundry list of bloopers through that where they just have it sitting in cash and it's gone in 5 to 10 years. But that's what, she was doing, living on as little as possible, because nobody was there to help her with it. The advisor there was 100% commission and was really only worried about getting it in either A, an annuity, or B, a managed account offering. And, what a lot of people perceive as what financial advisors do, just manage your investments. So it was sad, really, and it kind of irritated me. And that's really why I got out of that place and moved on to somewhere where I could kind of educate and help people plan for these things and not have to pay, an advisor 1.5%, 2%, just to manage basically a glorified target date fund. I said, fuck that. That is ignorant. That's a ripoff. I'm not going to be a part of it. And, yeah, it's probably affected my pocketbook, but I feel happier about it. I don't lose any sleep at night. And I feel better that I'm helping people actually change their lives and tell them spend that money. Like I'm not on an AUM or assets under management structure where, if they do take a distribution, my paycheck's going to go down this week. Fuck it. Take that money out. Go buy the Sea-Doo. Go ride around with Cash Flow King and let's get at it.
Yeah, no, and I am AUM, and I still tell people to do stuff
Fuck you,
that.
Cash Flow.
We'll have that battle another day. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where, people, you have to do that sometimes. I was going to say, life is too short to drive a shitbox. Now, if you're 22, and I made probably one of my biggest financial mistakes ever. I don't know if I said this on the show or not before, but I'm going to say it now. Financial blooper on the Cash Flow King. I was 22 years old. I was a business major in undergrad. I was actually a major in marketing. And I had done a lot of research and studies and a whole project on this particular vehicle. And I was dead set on buying it. I didn't have a lot of money at the time. And I think I had like $10,000 or something in cash when I was maybe graduating from undergrad, which I know, and this is a while
Pretty
back.
baller, man.
Well, it was until I decided to do something stupid, and I took virtually all of it and plowed it into a down payment on a brand new luxury sedan, which, quite frankly, I couldn't afford. Yeah, I don't know if I've ever told this story, but I'll tell it now because this is kind of a blooper. And it just goes to show you can dig yourself out of just about anything. But so I did this, right?
For sure.
And I was renting an apartment at the time. I had some family that moved across the country. So now there I was, first professional level position. It was not in financial services. I was in a completely different industry. And I was basically paycheck to paycheck with the exception of retirement. That's the one thing I did right. I think I started somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe 20 to 30% I was putting away in a 401k. Had no fucking idea what a 401k was, but I didn't come from money. And I was always told, hey, don't do what we did from your very first paycheck. Put something away for yourself and, you'll never miss it. And I took that advice to heart. I didn't fully understand why, but it was just quote unquote what I was supposed to do. So I did. Anyway, I don't know where I was going with this. Oh, so life's too short to drive a shitbox. If I had to go back and look at my 22-year-old self and advise myself then, it's very clear to see, dude, like, you shouldn't be buying that car. You can't afford that car, right? Now, Today, no problem, whatever, live it up. I'm in a different condition. So I guess when we say that, when I say things like, life's too short to drive a shitbox, or you're talking about, hey, this lady had millions and she was driving, an older car that easily she could have fixed a couple things on and got rid of the duct tape, spend the money. Again, it goes, I think, in different phases depending on where you are. Don't spend it to your detriment, but if you have it, it's okay to let it go as long as you're meeting your other financial goals. And I think that's what we're both trying to hit on, here today. I know we're running up on time a little bit. I have one other quick story. This actually, I didn't have anything planned, but this just came to mind. This is actually somebody that I met with this past week. This girl was 21 years old, right? And she worked in one of the healthcare systems. And she came up to our office and she says, hey, I work at the pharmacy. So-and-so told me that I need to do this and this with my account. We started talking and, just kind of, here, when I started investing at 22, so I have a soft spot for younger clients and people getting started and try to help them get on the right track. And so, this girl, she really had essentially no money. I think she had $4,400 in her account or something like that, right? And which is probably more than most people in their fucking 60s in America, but that's another story. So anyway,
it's true.
Yeah, it is true. It's sad, but it's true. So anyway, we get to talk, and we're talking about retirement stuff, showing her different things. And then towards the end of the conversation, somehow it came up that she got a student credit card. It was a Discover card. Again, I don't have anything against Discover, but that happened to be the type of card she had. And she had racked up, because she didn't know any better, like $4,000 of credit card debt. And yet she was worried about how much money she should be putting in her retirement account. And oh, by the way, in the meantime, she had gone from full-time to part-time, but they were letting her pick up extra hours. So the conversation quickly changed, and she really had no idea. And we started talking about several different things, but it kind of focused on making sure we got rid of that high interest rate credit card debt as opposed to worrying as much about the retirement. Not to say that you can't have debt and still invest, you can, but if you're paying almost 30% interest on a credit card, it doesn't matter if you're, investing additional funds in your retirement account. And so I pulled up.
It's like the inverse of the paying of my mortgage off first versus, paying off my credit card, like your last episode where you talked about paying off a mortgage. I'm going to have a 3% mortgage till I fucking die. I don't care.
Same.
Like it's
Same.
it's budgeted. I don't care.
Yep. And so I pulled up, and for those of you that listen to the Get Your Money Right segments, there's a section on this website called Vertex 42, VERTEX 42, vertex42.com. I have no affiliation with them, but I use their shit because I like it. And there was one spreadsheet on there about basically debt reduction. I forget the actual name of it, but it was on there where you can kind of compare different methods, snowball, avalanche. That's beyond the scope of today's show. Point is, I plugged in that credit card at the interest rate she was paying, which was right around 29.99%. And if she had just made the minimum payment, which I believe she said was like $125 a month, she was going to pay just as much in interest as what she currently owed on the card, and it was going to take her forever to pay it off. And you should have seen her fucking eyeballs. It was just like, holy shit, But here, if we pay a little bit extra,
the credit card company shows her that.
What's that?
I think it should be required that the credit card company shows you that.
They do.
Obviously, they show you some things, but not the detail.
If you make the minimum, it takes you this long. But that's relatively new. It wasn't always required
to
do that. Yeah. Yep.
I worked at Old Big Blue Bank when that rolled out, and they were one of the reasons for that, and the reason for a lot of law changes around credit cards. And that's probably a whole episode on its own, like you said. It's crazy.
Yeah, even the last financial blooper, for those that haven't listened to it yet, go back and check it out. It came out last week. It should be about a week ago from the time that this episode comes out. And I mean, I have clients. One of the examples worth $3.7 million, and didn't find out until much later that all of a sudden they had credit card debt. It's crazy. I mean. People do some crazy shit. So anyway, a lot of financial bloopers baked into today. You got anything else you want to mention to the listeners? I know you got a time commitment here, so we might have to wrap this.
That's okay. No, that's it. Thanks for having me on. I really enjoyed it. And sorry, if you go on tangents, it satisfies my ADHD to just the extreme. I'm not medicated for it, so that really helps me. I love it. Sorry if we cover too many topics at once. I kind of get scrambled, but I hope it comes across as that I'm passionate about this. I really love this. I want to do what's right by most people. I'm not into extravagant, financial planning ideas. It's pretty basic when it comes to me. Now, obviously, there's a segment of the market that works for. I usually don't have interactions with those people. The $3.7 million portfolio, that would be extremely rare where I currently serve in my current role. But maybe one day I'll start opening it up and looking at different strategies around those. But no, I've really enjoyed today. It's been awesome, Cash Flow.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on, Retirement Hitman. We hope to welcome you back to some additional episodes in the future. No pressure. We'll see what the listeners say. Hey, if you enjoyed today's show, everybody, please feel free to go on to your podcast player of choice. Leave us a 5-star review if you feel like we've earned it. If you don't feel like we've earned it, we'd rather you not fucking do anything than leave us a 1-star. But if you feel like we've earned it, 5 stars is always appreciated. We love the show. If you want to support the show financially, it's currently $3 a month. Premium subscriptions available. Look in the show notes. There's
Premium.
some additional
Premium.
That's right. There's some additional benefits to that. Speaking of, we will be doing an episode with Cube Crusher shortly on the newsletter that's going to be coming out, and we usually record some episodes only available for premium subscribers. So thanks again, everybody. Hope you enjoyed today's episode, Financial Bloopers featuring Retirement Hitman. We will see you in the next episode.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.